Hey everybody, this is a video to help you out with our Singer rebuttal assignment. Everyone's gotten this prompt in front of them here. If you need help with this, the first big chunk of this video is for you. If you are ready to jump in there and you know what you want to say, you're kind of excited to tackle this, you don't have to watch this whole video, but I absolutely do want you to jump to the end. There'll be a link in the description to jump to the end of this video where I'm going to go through a bunch of things, a bunch of pitfalls that I've seen from this essay in years past. In other words, arguments that people make that don't work. So please skip to the end if you don't want to watch the kind of setup here. And so what I'm going to do up to that point is talk to you about some ways you might tackle this assignment. As always with assignments that I make in this class, I'm going to give you things like, you may complete the assignment in whatever way you'd like. That doesn't mean I want you to, record a movie. It doesn't need to be written. But in terms of how many paragraphs do you need? Do I need an introduction? Do I need a conclusion? That's kind of up to you. As I've said to people, and I'm sure it frustrates them, but it's the way I think, all essays have introductions because all essays start. Similarly, all essays end. So I want your essay to start well. The ways to do that are really kind of up to you. What I will say is that you do want to make sure that you are giving enough space to Singer's argument, that you are representing it fairly, and we'll get into that in more detail in a second. But that means you need to dedicate some space either in an introduction or throughout your essay to making it very clear what Singer is arguing. Using quotes would help you with this, but a really good paraphrase or summary would help you too. So that's the kind of guidance I have on that. Make sure your reader can follow what exactly you are referring to when it comes to Singer. So at this point, I'm going to start a little PowerPoint here, and my face, I think, will just disappear and you'll hear my voice. What I want to show you is how you might break apart Singer's argument using that Toolman terminology we've been talking about in class. What's really, really key here is that with a long, complex argument, you're not just going to have one claim and one piece of evidence and one warrant. It's going to be a bunch of them kind of tied together. And oftentimes, the evidence itself will be an argument. The warrant itself will be an argument. And so you can make these little chains of claim, evidence, warrant kind of off into infinity if you wanted to. And I'll show you what I mean by that. But as we go through and kind of break the components up, I hope you'll see a couple of places where you might want to attack Singer's argument or at least challenge him. So one claim he makes is individuals... Oh, I just spilled my coffee all over the table. I'm glad the camera's off. Anyway, he makes the claim individuals should donate all money not needed for necessities to organizations that will directly prevent the deaths of innocent children, and he says doing so is moral. I mean, that's one of the pieces of evidence he gives for doing that. Now, the warrant is therefore this: morality is not subjective or relative, right? What's good is always good, regardless of the situation, regardless of the person. It's not relative, meaning it doesn't change according to the time or the situation. You might also say, as a warrant, a desire to be moral should drive all our actions. Now, I would hope a lot of you would agree with this, but maybe it's the problem with, it's funny actually, as I just said this, I said should drive all our actions. Is that true? Should it drive all our actions or just some of them? Is it even true that we should be motivated by morality? So here already you have some warrants you could use to attack Singer on. I'm not sure these are the ones you want to use, but there are some possibilities. But notice, if we now just talk about that piece of evidence, doing so is moral, that becomes its own argument. And we could break that down again into a separate claim, evidence, warrant thing. So giving money to save children is moral. And the evidence for that is keeping children alive who'd otherwise die is more valuable than enjoying luxuries. And what is the warrant there? This is a little strange phrasing or complicated phrasing, but I think it's important. The continuance of person A's life is more important than the increase of person B's quality of life. So think about that. This deserves some contemplation. It's more important and therefore more moral, right? This is the basis of saying it's moral. It's more important that a person continue their life than another person increase their quality of life. Now, this is an interesting thing to play around with, right? Because another way of phrasing this is, how much would person B have to increase the quality of their life where that increase in quality became more important than this person merely staying alive? That might be good food for thought. I can't emphasize enough how much coffee is all over this desk right now. I hope the computer doesn't break. But now look, this warrant here could also become its own argument, right? I just take it again. What's my evidence for that claim? Now, Singer gives us a lot of evidence. He gives us the anecdote of the Dora movie. He gives us a hypothetical. He gives us that analogy of Bob and the Bugatti. He also sort of assumes here, the reason I put these are in red is because he's kind of assuming this as evidence, but the increase in a quality of life brought on by luxuries is marginal. So he's saying, in other words, if you buy a bigger TV, it might increase your life, but by definition, if it's a luxury, it's only increasing your happiness or your quality of life a little bit, which relates back to what we were talking about before. So you might think about this argument and say, is it true that buying the new iPhone only increases my quality of life in a marginal sense? Or is there something that luxuries do for us in our current society which makes them more than luxuries? He also assumes it's better to be alive than dead, which sounds obvious, but that is in itself an assumption. As I said here, what if the luxury item can be the difference between a person leading a happy versus a sad life? What if the continuance of a given life is the continuance of a sad life? Does this change the equation? These are all good questions, folks, but you're going to have to really suss them out. You're really going to have to explain your thought process behind these. If there's one piece of if there's one piece of advice I could give you as you're going through and organizing this essay, is to take things slow. Really slow down the pace here to make sure that your argument is clear and valid. So again, we can make another argument off his claim that saving children's life is moral. Keeping children alive who would otherwise die is more valuable than enjoying luxuries. That's his evidence. But then we get back to this warrant, which he's been saying, he admits in the beginning of his essay, we should judge people's actions by their outcomes. The actions, that is. And that's utilitarian. In other words, if the child dies, it doesn't matter what motivates you, what the context was, what the mitigating factors were. If the child dies and you had a chance to prevent it, you are the same as someone who lets a train hit a child. So you might want to just talk about the assumptions behind utilitarian philosophy. Is that the only way we should judge actions, by the outcomes? Okay? So again, folks, you take a simple, claim evidence warrant thing like that, and if you actually pull it out in different directions, you get some kind of, crazy spider web here where every piece of evidence could itself be separate claims and the warrants can be separate arguments. And my point here is to say, remember, when you're using this Toulmin terminology, that's the guy's name, Toulmin, the claim evidence warrant, don't think I have to find the claim and the warrant. There could be many of them and they're often tied together. But the point is by using this technique, you often will expose things that you can attack or find places where you need to defend your own argument. Just one last one. The claim is made in this essay, isn't it, that not giving money to feed an anonymous starving child is the same as letting a child be run over by a train. His evidence is that $200 can save a child's life, and that $200 is as easy as pulling a lever. That's implicit. But then you get this warrant. All children's lives are equally worth saving. A death you are aware of is as bad as one you never know about. So think about things like that. All right, so I hope this gave you some ideas of ways you can attack Singer's argument in a satisfactory way. Now what I want to do is to skip to some things that I've seen in the past with this assignment and